record on the computer. Let's do this. All right, Contessa, Kimberly, where are you guys at?
Okay, so I am in Raleigh, North Carolina, and this is where we're going to hold the event. I would much rather have a real life on the ground event rather than a virtual event, even though I have more experience with virtual events. Kimberly?
Okay. So our
Where
event is
where
around.
where are you? Where are you?
Oh, I'm in Memphis, outside of Memphis. Okay.
Awesome. You can continue. I just wanted you to say
Oh,
that.
okay. So I'm outside of Memphis, Tennessee. So our event is around a seed library. And we are thinking about this in a very stepwise kind of way. So the first step is bringing people together. And as Contessa said, it would be local to Raleigh, North Carolina. And I know that she's had some contacts with a botanist. And so we are thinking about this as one of the a couple of products in the long term would be a seed library, ultimately a garden, and I'll get to it in a stepwise way, and a community asset map. So the first step of this is inviting into this event a botanist or someone who does work in agriculture, a city planner, activist organizer, a local librarian, people who have experience with seed libraries, and talking about the kinds of seeds that would be indigenous to the area. And we are thinking about this as something that supports the local ecosystem. And so the first part would be a conversation. And from that conversation, so like we're doing here in the Wise Crowds, is making sure we record it, making sure we document it, make sure we archive it, because the conversation itself becomes part of the artifacts. And so from that artifact, we learn, or in the process of creating that artifact, we learn what is needed in the area. So set as another part of this conversation is thinking about the kinds of things that we can grow to support nutrition in the local area, to address food apartheid in the area. So another person who would be at the table would be a nutritionist as well. So we don't want to just make the claim that there's food apartheid and not bring someone who has expertise in this area to the conversation. So the first part of this is the conversation itself. And that in itself is a small event that is manageable, that fits the capacity that we currently have. Then the second step in this, as a separate event, would be then looking at.
Can I pause right there? And so one of the things where we're having conversations is the size of the very first event. Because I would like to bring in community members as well, because this impacts them. And not just the community leaders. And so Dr. Kimberly and I, we don't see quite eye to eye on that yet. So that's something
Well, we
that
don't see eye to eye on the number of people.
Right. That's, yeah, on the number of people. Another problem that I see with the very first meeting is, why would they meet with us in the first place? Because they've been on the ground doing this for many, many years. And here we are with this new thing called ReFi. And they've probably heard before and over again about new and exciting ways that people can help them. And it really hasn't helped.
Right. So I'll stick with the first part of it. So part of the introduction, or so having worked with librarians, there are lots of reasons why I know librarians would want to come to this conversation. And just as an incentive, part of this would be an honorarium from the money that we get for the project. So the question that is on the table in terms of the number of people, is this an event that's for 10 or 12 additional people, or is this an event for 50 people? So I agree that it should involve the community. The question for me is about the capacity to hold an event that where we invite 50 people. So if we have the capacity for it, I'm in agreement with having an event that involves 50 people, but I'm in an agreement with an event that serves 50 people that we have the capacity to serve. So I want to be clear about that. Yeah, so yeah, I think that's, as far as the first part, I think that's pretty much. Is there anything else you want to add, Contessa?
Nope, that's it. My heart is with the seed library, having community gardens, being able to solve the problem of this food shortage, especially here in South Raleigh, and really being able to create a community with the people who are already doing the work. It's really important to me that I connect with these people and these organizations and not feel like I'm coming in to try to take over all the hard work that they've been doing.
Right.
All
And
right.
so let me add one
Can I
more
make,
thing.
oh, sure.
Yeah, let me add one more thing. So the event in itself is a gathering place, but it's also an exploration. So that's another reason why I'm okay with not making it large, because there's a lot of discovery here in the process to find out what kind of political will or interest there is in this local area. That's it.
All right. So in terms of place, it sounds like the action is happening in person in Raleigh, North Carolina. And the purpose, I get a sense of this exploration and gathering, creating a community of people that are already active in a local scene. You make mention of botanists, librarians, city planners, seed librarians, a whole bunch of folks. And in terms of the particulars, I get a question around size, who's sort of in there. I get a question about around why, what would motivate this group of participants to engage in this thing, and I get a question around sort of creating artifacts. What other clarifying questions, Charles? Looks like you got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just curious about timeline, schedule-wise. Are there dates already set? You know, just because, and also I'm just, you know, here we are, end of summer, and it's ReFi Spring, so I don't know the context about that either. But I'm just curious if there's already dates. Thanks.
We do not have dates already. We're in the very beginning stages of planning the event.
I have a question. So of the community organizers or the different circles of folks that you've mentioned, or just the different circles, do you have other people that have hand raised or that you've already engaged in conversation about this topic?
So we are still in the conceptual phase of it. However, is our background research. We have seen where there are other seed libraries across the country, and one of the ways that they've been able to get these projects off the ground is by working with the University Ag Extension, because the Ag Extension, so they are highly motivated to, so the Ag Extensions and the libraries are motivated to be involved in projects like this, and actually they get money and support for this. But that seems to be a key to the success for something like this, is the existing infrastructure that comes with the University Ag Extension services.
Any other clarifying questions?
I have one more, which is, yeah, what is your eventual desired outcome? Like what if ReFi is not something that the communities are looking for right now? I guess those are two
I
questions.
want to be able to help feed my community. I want to be able to help with the problem of starvation and food deserts in the area. And I believe that using the tools of ReFi is a great way to do that, especially since I know that there are grants out there and I can create projects. We can create projects where there are money set aside for things like this. And so I want to be able to pour into them with money, because money can change everything for a lot of these organizations and a lot of these people who are on the ground. There's something that they actually need. They need money. They're not short of ideas. They need money. And I want to be able to provide that for them.
And just to bring Dunya sort of up to speed, there's a particular question, Dunya, around how big should the sort of first event be in sparking off this conversation, that Kimberly and Contessa have some sense of multiple conversations, but to really spark things off, where might we think in terms of starting? Scott, you got a question or you got a roll?
Yes, I wanted to get a little additional context, and sorry in advance for, being the community currency guy asking stuff about community currencies. But is there a network of businesses in this area in either or both of your communities that you're already engaged with? And are there any intentionally transversal networks, like a collective impact initiative, that you might be able to look to or work with as it kind of nest this within, because those have already done a lot of critical groundwork, creating a lot of intersectional partnerships, etc. I'm not going to say any of them are perfect. It's a case by case basis, and who's involved in all that stuff. But when you say that people need money, that's something that resonates with me. It's a problem that I've been working on when you want to activate a community around local needs using local resources. You don't always have to put yourself in a position where you're waiting on external resources. Sorry,
So,
that was supposed to
no.
clarifying. Yes.
Yeah. We're clarifying questions. Advice comes later. Right? Clarifying questions. So it sounds like the question is: are there networks existing that you guys might be able to tap into?
Yes, they are. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, if there's no other additional clarifying questions, and it's funny how just framing it, if there are no other clarifying questions, just take your additional clarifying question and park it. I'm going to invite Contessa and Kimberly to mute themselves and turn off their webcam, and invite everybody else in the group to go sort of weapons hot and think together about what we might recognize about their situation and where we might start. What do we think? What's in the room? And for the sake of this portion, I would invite everybody to just unmute themselves so that we can just have an actual conversation.
So just to clarify, we're brainstorming about how to approach this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, starting from a marketing perspective on things, I feel like it's highly important that way early before the event even happens, that you need to educate people on why creating a seed library and why this gathering place is important for these kinds of groups. What is their benefit that they will get out of this? And so what are the pros? What are the cons? How they can see this happening. So basically creating a lot of content, creating a lot of educational content would be maybe like the first step. And then, like, again, I'm thinking from a marketing perspective. So just using the call to action that, hey, this event is going to happen and this is what we want to do. I really see it in the educational kind of thing, if this was the right thing.
I can kind of tag on there or pick up what's coming up for me is conversations. So I think it was Kimberly, I think had said something about recordings, documents, conversations, artifacts. It's just like one of the things I'm very involved in. I've been and so I'm thinking like a couple of things to weave like already start to have conversations in the community, and they can be totally organic and informal, or they could be scheduled or a combination, and just start to document. Don't be too kind of, you know, intrusive and overbearing about it, but just start to gather, and that will exactly generate and evolve this educational content that Sophia was just mentioning, and start to grow that garden actually of those artifacts already, and then lastly just like kind of sensing into this like rolling event that kind of emerges and just kind of merges into the event proper, which is more like maybe a summit or obviously a lot more focused energy of concentration, but already just start to get the flow and in the community and the conversation.
I
Check.
really love this sentiment of working out loud as just a guiding principle. It's a specific framework that it's Googleable. There's a TED Talk, working out loud, but just this notion of like, as you're describing, Charles, like document already and just share that shit as broadly as we can, so that we're creating the surface area of content also that Sophia has mentioned. Anybody
but
else?
also just one more thing, just reminding me about this keyword that was coming out about capacity, right? The capacity to serve, and throughout, like there has to be also the capacity to serve, you know, themselves basically as a team, and so whatever works really, in terms of getting that rhythm going.
Something I'll add to the kind of to what was asked. I think about the invitation and purpose, and so when you think about capacity or kind of what is the journey from here to there, I'm thinking, you know, who do you want to co-create with? Who from the local communities can co-create, and maybe start with just an invitation to dialogue, and to clarify your purpose of why, you know, you're interested in the space. I think this can be something even before putting in the labor, I guess, into marketing and creating content, is just who do you want to be in dialogue with throughout this process? And that might end up being, rather than just the two of you, maybe it's a circle of 3, 4, 5, whatever that number. You can start with these small conversations, and then the answers to capacity and how will emerge from those conversations.
Yeah, I'll hop in. That was a really good note. Thank you, Susan. Yeah, I mean, this is, you know, there's an invitation in this event around, you know, kind of a call to greater action in the specific community for the specific purpose of targeting food insecurity and hunger. It's a very universal issue. And I think it's, you know, relatively easy to have people rally around the idea that it's not a good idea to have a lot of hungry people, you know, people going hungry unnecessarily, and creating this, you know, kind of catalytic invitation in this community to increase the like collective attention and intention into this space. And yeah, that's really powerful. That's why I was thinking about the collective impact networks and the like, because a lot of their legitimacy is, you know, through having a very inclusive approach at the stakeholder level. So when I'm in the currency design space and even in my own like facilitation flows, we design systems beginning with why, which provides you the who, right? So basically it's like, who are the major stakeholder types that are present in this place, in this, you know, in this space around, you know, around food. I mean, those are very knowable actors. So it is easy enough to kind of get a clear sense of who needs to be engaged and when, perhaps. But it's a co-design journey. And this is a critical learning from the community currency space, decades of experimentation around engaging communities around different economic arrangements. The systems that survive are the ones that are designed with their communities. So, these people, even if they're not engaged at the very front end, by the time things are ready to go into implementation, they need to have a clear ability to sense that they were included in the process, or someone with their interests at heart was involved in the process. I mean, I'm probably preaching this to the choir here, but it's really important to say this out loud in ReFi spaces, because we do get a lot of white saviorism and a lot of technocentric thinking that is very blind to a lot of the deep work that's already been done, and a lot of the spiritual and anti-colonial work that's still ongoing. Yeah. So anyway, I think this is a really interesting opportunity that they're creating in the community. I'm just kind of curious, what the right order of operations be. The main question earlier, or discrepancy in the thinking between the two, was that it was around the event size, right? What's the capacity, and how many people do we want to invite in? I'd try to Goldilocks it somewhere in the middle of the numbers that were provided, but it definitely needs to be focused on, a critical group of of intersectional stakeholders, just so that whatever actions end up being taken are, properly informed, I guess.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like for me, like every party I want to throw is like the biggest party humanly imaginable. Like I want everybody, like first thing out of the gate, like everybody in the town needs to come. And so I noticed that, like, I import that ethos into this context, like 50 people, fuck 50, 250, let's fucking go, right? But also in the way, so if I really internalize sort of what's being brought in terms of like co-design, like the group that can bring that to bear is going to be smaller by nature. Like it would be a really great, like wonderful problem to have if 50 people wanted to join this discussion. But I think like the chances are that if we're going to start to like really dream into it, and especially it depends, right? If we're just going to have a conversation where we just fucking talk and we don't do any goddamn thing, 50 people will show up to that shit easy. But as soon as there's actually an impetus towards, okay, and after we do all of this talking, then we're actually going to get to work and do some shit, the list of people that are actually going to be ready to roll up their sleeves and do something is going to be pretty small. And I think I would feel really okay about that, actually. If I could get together a group of like, like that 2 pizza rule, like 24 people or a dozen people that might be down to like really think hard about, hey, like how could we do this thing actually? Like what are the resources that we have to bring to bear? I would say that would be pretty good success, like of actually moving forward, probably with half of that group, continuously, to then maybe host something bigger or whatever the next thing that you guys put together. It doesn't have to be another event, but whatever like project that you think like, hey, we can actually do this as our like minimum viable impact into this space. Maybe that's not our full seed library, but what might be the first step to get our rhythm going of collaboration that leads us eventually towards a seed library. Anybody else?
Yes, I was listening in. I might have missing pieces, but thank you for your summary, Jeremy. But from what I understand, what's coming up for me is the importance of inviting some food insecure people from the community and to pay them to attend. Doesn't need to be so many, but the key, like some of the people, and I find that will really inform the process. And to have food at the gathering, also really important, because this is the advantage of doing it in person. There's just such an opportunity there to support already who you're trying to support, and also find out who's already tried this. I'm sure that some people in the community might have already tried to do something similar, and they should definitely be like to build on that instead of trying to reinvent the wheel there. Yes, those were some of the points.
Something that came to mind, Jeremy, when you were talking about people shifting in and out, well, kind of changing depending on the purpose of the conversations. I do see value in your role as just holding space for these conversations on a consistent basis. So kind of leading up to the event, at least my experience with a conference I just ran was to first set direction and just weekly had an open, just like with this session, kind of a regular time where here I'm holding space for this purpose. And as the purpose might shift, different people will come in and out, of kind of embracing the open space principle of whoever is there are the right people. And as you get focused on logistics and yes, like what do we imagine this experience to be like, certain people will stay and some people will leave. And the people who really feel like they have skin in the game, so to speak, is probably a better analogy. I have confidence that they will continue to stay, and they will end up being that will be the emerged kind of, that's the circle of co-creators that will emerge from holding these regular kind of spaces for conversation. So that's one thought that came to mind. The other one is part of setting direction, I think, is also about what is your language for this journey? And maybe this is related to marketing, but also just, I think it's more about, yeah, what is your language? What new language are you bringing into the space? That might be new to the communities that you're connecting with. And yeah, kind of having dialogue on that. So maybe, again, there's this sense of like co-creating kind of shared purpose and principles and language as a foundational context for the roadmap.
Thank you, Susan. Anybody else? Awesome. Contessa, Kimberly, why don't you guys come back and let us know what you thought about that dialogue and what you might be able to take and make use of.
This is really helpful. So a lot of very insightful things and new language, new frameworks for thinking about it. It's really helpful, and I look forward to talking to Contessa about this more after this event. For me, it helps give me a way forward in the conversation. So this is good. Thank you.
I enjoyed the different points of view, the different ways of looking at things. Definitely, I'm feeling boots on the ground, get involved in what's already happening. Definitely resonated with the white savior part, like, you know, I'm not coming in to save the day type of attitude, especially when you think about people who are starting, think about people that look like me, but not the people who are actually active in solving the problem. They don't look like me. And making sure that we connect with those people in organizations, especially Black organizations who have been out there doing the work, who have not been getting the recognition that they deserve for very systemic reasons. That's really important. So I appreciate more than I can put into words right
Word. Well, you know, my pleasure. That's how we fucking roll, right?
Yeah. This has been extremely helpful. I have no idea how it's going to go, but I do think that's definitely what was needed. I definitely feel good about moving forward.
Cool. Well, this is the structure. So, Sophia, like you played around with impromptu networking. This has been Wise Crowds. You know how to roll with Wise Crowds. You know how to do Trika consulting. And so I guess I want to zoom out a little bit and talk to the other participants about the context within which this whole question is happening within. Like I've been poking people in a lot of different channels to participate in this space and be a part of our sort of brain trust. And, and and this is happening within this context of a series of events we call the ReFi Spring. ReFi Spring is organized by primarily the ReFi DAO and ReFi for regenerative finance, and DAO meaning decentralized autonomous organization. So the ReFi DAO is sponsored by a lot of the big players sort of in the regenerative crypto space. Toucan is involved. I know CeeLo is all up over in this beast. Regen Network is involved. More people that I probably should know their logos. But ReFi DAO itself is this group of different decentralized autonomous organizations that sort of put together in a bit of a shared pot to try and increase the surface area of this particular corner of the crypto Web3 space around regenerative finance and specifically the regen meme, like the meme that is regeneration. And what does that sort of look and feel like? And actually, how do we do that together? Given the sort of like terrifying amount of work that we have before us when you think about climate change and like systems change and just political unrest. And oh man, it just feels like there's a lot of shit show stuff that we need to like bootstrap ourselves to be able to deal with. And it doesn't seem like we have really super great ways of actually addressing some of the challenges that we're up against. So the ReFi Spring is this series of, I believe it's 50 events between now and spring of 2023 that are being organized all over the place with sort of these sort of questions that Contessa and Kimberly are sort of bringing into us around like really, really hyper local focus of like what is happening within my local community that sort of intersects with whether it be climate change or grassroots community organization, or the goal that I think they also have on the horizon, which is how do we actually spark up a project that we might be able to like attract resources towards and actually get some stuff done. So that's kind of the context that we were sort of dropping into as we hang out around the ReFi Spring. Contessa, Kimberly, can you guys help me out by offering some more color about how ReFi Spring came onto your radar and what drew you to it?
Yes. Okay. So I'm back. So Dr. Kimberly and I are actually in the middle of a ReFi bootcamp that is brought together through Token Engineering Commons and Longtail Financial. And so we are learning about protocols, about bonding curves, about all the things that go into regenerative financing and how these tools, currency, money, can be used to solve the problems that deal with the planet and the people that live in it. And so one of the things that they wanted us to do was to create a capstone project. And it could be about anything that had to do with refi. And to me, if it does not impact my community, I don't want anything to do with it. And so that's when I came up with, this is kind of where I want to start with creating a project. Kimberly, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm in a boot camp.
I kind of dragged her.
And we had to come up with the project. So
Yeah, I dragged her kicking and screaming into. She's
no,
not
you
a.
didn't. No, you
She's
did not. She invited me to join, and it actually, the refi actually fit a lot of my experience as an academic in working on like data infrastructures and talking about climate credits and exchanging credits like with carbon emissions and things like that. And so so Contessa invited me to join, or suggested that I join, and I was really interested in how the boot camp, the way they advertised it, is bringing lots of things together, like scientific writing, data science, community building, and so it's creating a context to talk about how different systems are tokenized and the decentralization of tokenization. So it's a really good opportunity. And we started out with our project in writing writing speculative fiction, and decided that we wanted to work on that a little bit more outside the context of the boot camp. And so then we decided that we wanted to do the next thing we looked at was a refi event that we could get support from through ReFi Spring, but also through the boot camp as well.
Cool. Well, that's what's up. That's the nuts and bolts of the ReFi Spring. So there's a whole bunch of events that are sort of going on. If you think about for your local context as well, I would seriously consider invite everybody else to think about what are the sort of communities, topics, and stuff that's going on that you might like to throw a party around, and how might we be able to figure out how we can make use of magic internet money to like throw direct resources and attention towards that problem and increase the surface area of engagement around it.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you do, like you're saying, directing resources? What do you mean?
Well, there's two ways to sort of, as far as I understand, to direct resources. So number one is kind of this idea that you guys sort of made mention in passing, which is like direct investment or engagement that can look like augmented bonding curves, not to get super technical, but can look like engage people who care about the topic to direct their resources towards it. And whether that's a little bit from a lot of people or whether that's like traditional impact investing, but or that looks like, or whether that looks like something like really big and complicated, like Gitcoin's funding, right? There are resources available for people that are doing work that is valuable, that may not have a business model attached to it. So that's sort of like the big pool of, can we use blockchain technology to organize our collaboration, our coordination around this thing that we're doing, and by doing so, open up that collaboration and coordination for resources that are native to the blockchain environment to flow, or non-native resources, right? There's a lot of sort of like ESG investment dollars that are sort of that are right now directed towards bullshit greenwashing campaigns, because it's ludicrous to say this out loud, but it's hard for traditional financial agents to find good quality projects to invest in. And so by using blockchain as infrastructure of our collaboration, we can make steps to make that more visible and more tangible to those resources. There's also a whole nother really interesting possibility space that is, if for example, you can start to figure out a data flow, like a stream of data that you can upload through an Oracle. This is already getting, I don't know if I can explain this one without being super technical. I'm sorry, but it's possible.
No, please do.
Okay. And well, since I'm going to upload this on YouTube, we'll also get a chance to like have other people red team whether or not I know what the fuck I'm talking about. So that's a little exciting for me personally. I can feel like my skin getting all flushed. But okay, so let's say that in your project of creating a seed library, you figure out a way to take some form of like these artifacts that you're generating, some form of this community data. Say that some botanist comes up and says, "Hey, this is a really interesting thing that people should be paying attention to." And if you can figure out a mechanism to get that source of data directly onto a blockchain through what's called an oracle. If you can do that, depending on whether or not that data is actually sort of valuable and knowable, it's possible to open up that stream of data as a speculative vehicle. So what might be a good proxy? So let's say that some botanist gives you some information about some sort of like little known keystone species for your area, right? That gives you some indication of ecological health. And you guys just start streaming that. You find a way to stream that data directly to the blockchain on a recurring basis. And what you can do is actually create through the DeFi tooling, you can actually create this a speculative market to exist on whatever that stream of data is. You can use automated market makers, basically like high-tech financial engineering software that basically taxes participation when you enter that marketplace by creating a pool of liquidity that people can then basically decide that they can more accurately predict the future of this indicator. Like if I decide, hey, I'm a super smart guy, I'm close to the stream of data, I can make money betting that I can predict the future of this ecosystem's health, right? This may be a little far-fetched, but there are people that know, right? And if you basically say, hey, if you have the ability to like do a bunch of homework and make a return on your investment by predicting the future in this space, you can tax people on both as they come into that marketplace and as they exit that marketplace. And that tax you can use to basically go into a common pool that you could then use to influence either that metric or to fund your project that is creating the seed library, for example. And the basic notion is like, hey, can we find a stream of data that is interesting and actually inherently valuable to create? And does anybody really willing to put their money where their mouth is and predict the future of that? If that is the case, you can create a flow of funding that is people entering into that speculative market that you guys can then use to fund your project and shit like that. So that is the dark side. Like you have to be like very comfortable with like degenerative financial systems and markets. But I'm very happy playing with dark forces in order to fund shit that I think is actually matters.
This is very helpful. Thank you.
We'll find out when somebody finds this video and identifies just how little I know about stuff. But yeah, but in terms of like directing resources, there's like also like super vanilla ways of directing resources towards projects like what you guys are running with. Like Gitcoin grants are about to spark up here in the 7th of September. Has a show of hands, raise your hand if you've participated in Gitcoin's grants before. well, let's get into it. Yeah, so Gitcoin does this quarterly funding for open source projects. And that started off as software projects, but it has expanded in scope significantly. Last quarter, Gitcoin basically directed the giving of $5 million to 1,200 different open source projects. One of those projects I participate in, which is Regens Unite, similar to what you guys are talking about, Contessa and Dr. Kimberly, around organizing in-person events that we think are important conversations that we want to make happen. So we put our project to organize in-person events up on Gitcoin's grants, and the community of people that thought that that was a good idea basically donated $1 to point at our idea and get matched up with that pool of $5 million. And so 40,000 people basically used $1 per vote as a signaling mechanism to this pool of around $5 million to distribute it amongst all sorts of different projects, some being super technical in nature, some being totally non-technical, as is mine. So, you know, if you can find something that people care about, and there are pools of resources, there are people that are happy to like contribute resources into doing that work. And it always helps if you can find a business model in there too, but you know, it's not necessary to bootstrap and get started.
Thank you. That was very, very helpful. Can I get a copy of this video?
For sure. I'll just put it on YouTube and you can come
Awesome.
watch it, send it around. And I noticed that, you know, the open space thing went in a different direction. We did this wise crowd thing. That seems to have come to the end of its narrative. And I've just been monologuing at you motherfuckers for like the last 20 minutes, you know. Where's the energy at? Do we feel like this is a good place to stop and come back some other times and bring some more friends? Or is there some question or subject matter, some stuff that you guys are geeked out to throw into the center that we might be able to organize around and bring some new energy into the space?
I'm good. I am happy with the way everything went today. And I'm voting that we can stop and go on about our business.
Yeah, I got a lot to process.
Cool. Well, feel free. Get the fuck out of here, ladies. Live your life. Live your best lives. Anybody have a difference to that?
This has been amazing. Thank you everyone so much for your participation. It means a lot. It really does. Thank you.
Good luck and look to connect. It'll be great.
I probably missed this, but do you have do you have a sense of when you would want this to happen? I just like sometimes puts a stake in the ground.
Not yet. I just want to focus on, and I hope, you know, I'll talk to Dr. Kimberly, but to focus on having those smaller conversations before we create the big event, to make sure that we are doing things, of course, in decency and in order, but also in honor of the community.
Yeah, and Jeremy, is it possible to get, how are you about sharing a contact list of people who were part of the event?
For sure. What I can invite everybody to do is to throw your name and email into the chat if you want to share it around. I would also love to send everybody who participated in this session a POAP, proof of attendance. Yeah, proof of attendance protocol. Exactly. A fucking digital participation badge for hanging out and playing around in our brain trust. So if you leave your name and email in the chat, I can send one of those. If you don't want to send your name and email to everybody, you can send it to me and I will send you a participation badge. And we'll figure out what that is good for at some point.
Ah, no, that's not what I wanted to do. There we go. I didn't mean to yell out loud, sorry.
It just got so quiet and it's okay.
You're forgiven.
All right, gotta run. Thank you so much. Hopefully connect with all of y'all later. Bye.
Safe travels.
Yeah, I'm looking forward.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, Jeremy.
My pleasure.
Super cool.
Thank
So
you.
these are going to be